Okay, for this portion of the lab, we're going to identify the structures that are found within the Lab 1 list. That's this first column that's here. Okay, we're just going to start at the top with our thoracic cavity and up in the neck, cervical region, and then work our way down into the abdominal cavity. So starting at the top, some of this we saw on the previous video. We've got the cervical portion of the thymus here and here, those two lobes. The thyroid gland lies right in the middle, medial to those. And then we've got our larynx, which is here. And I'm going to go ahead and point out the trachea again, even though it's not on that list for now. It'll appear later, but for now, this is our trachea right here too. Okay? Now, as we move down into the thoracic cavity, we're going to encounter our membranes. So remember, the pleura is the membrane that surrounded the lungs, and the pericardium was the membrane that surrounded the heart. All serous membranes, which include the pleura, the pericardium, and the peritoneum down here in the abdominal cavity, they always have two layers. The outer layer is known as the parietal layer. Now this is what we cut through. We cut through the parietal layer, and if I keep kind of digging a little bit here in the thoracic cage, you can kind of see it right here. I can peel it away from the inner portion of the ribs, the deep portion of the ribs. This is known as the parietal pleura. Parietal pleura. There's also a visceral pleura on the surface of the lungs. Now, we can't really peel it off because it's part of the lung itself. So we just say that the visceral pleura lies on the surface of the lung, and this is kind of what gives it that shiny appearance that we see. So parietal pleura on the wall, visceral pleura on the lung. And we would see the same over here on the left-hand side. Parietal pleura would be here, this membrane here lining the inside of the ribs, and then visceral pleura would be on the left side of the lungs there. For the pericardium, it's kind of gotten folded to the back, which is okay because we need to see the surface of the heart, but here it is. That fibrous membrane right there is the pericardium, okay? Now, looking at the heart itself, the heart is 4 chambers. This chamber here is known as the right auricle. Now, you might have heard the word atrium before, right atrium? The atrium is the chamber that's inside the auricle. So your blood flows through the atrium. But this pouch right here, the physical outside surface that we're able to see, this is called an auricle. So this is the right auricle. Right here is the left auricle. There are 2 pouches, okay? And the atria would be the chambers within these pouches. We come down here to the lower chambers. They're known as ventricles. This is the right ventricle. This is the left ventricle. The left ventricle has this tip right here called the apex. Okay, so left ventricle, right ventricle. And running on the surface of the heart, it's kind of hard to see in this particular pig. It's really pale, but hopefully it translates to the video a little bit. But there is a vessel running right through here. That's called the coronary artery. Coronary artery. Sometimes it may look pink, sometimes it may be kind of white or gray, and mine actually blends in with the heart itself. So mine's kind of tough to see here on this pig, but it's there. It's running right through here, and that's called the coronary artery. Of course, we have our lungs. Right lungs, the lungs are lobed, so you kind of see these portions right here. These are all the portions of the right lung. Over here is the left lung. So you see the lobes of the left lung here. Okay? And then under the lungs and under the heart is the diaphragm. That's this rainbow kind of arched muscle right here. It's laying right on top of the liver. So this is the diaphragm. Okay? Now coming down to the abdominal cavity. Down here in the abdominal cavity, we're going to have the peritoneum. Now the peritoneum is that membrane right here that we had to cut through. Remember, it was along the bottom of the diaphragm and we kind of trimmed it off and away. This is known as the parietal peritoneum, okay, because this was attached to the body wall. I peeled it off the body wall. So this is parietal peritoneum. The visceral peritoneum covers the surface of the abdominal organs, and it's very similar to that pleura up here. You can't really see it, you can't really peel it off because it is part of the organ itself, but it's what gives the organ this shiny appearance. So visceral peritoneum is on the surface of these abdominal organs that we see, and parietal peritoneum is this membrane that's out here to the side, okay? This big guy right here, that's the liver. The liver is quite large. There's many lobes to it. You can kind of roll the organs and see lobes back here that are toward the back, the dorsal side. Over here, big, huge lobes. All that's liver. Under the liver is the stomach. The stomach is this kind of balloon or deflated balloon-like structure right here. I'm going to pick up a little bit so you can see it a little bit more clearly. There we go. This little balloon-like pouch, kind of squishy, that's going to be the stomach that's there, okay? All of this that's very tightly coiled, that's the small intestine. The large intestine is this larger structure that we see here, and we call this region of the large intestine the spiral colon. You can kind of tell why. It's all really coiled up really tight. So this is part of the large intestine, and specifically we call this region the spiral colon. If we lift up the liver and the stomach to kind of view and kind of push down the intestines, the pancreas will come into view. So hopefully maybe you can see this. It may be a little dark, but there's some more of that peritoneum right here. Right, so we're just going to kind of peel through this peritoneum, almost like a little spider web that's there. Lift the stomach up, and we're able to see the pancreas. So the pancreas is this gristly-like structure right here. Okay? It kind of has the same texture to it that the thymus gland did up here in the neck, and that thoracic thymus had on top of the heart. That's because the pancreas is a gland, so it's going to look kind of rough and bumpy. It's actually really delicate, though. Okay, and then coming off the stomach and above the pancreas is going to be the spleen. So I'm kind of going to move the stomach medial toward the middle, and then you can see this gray flap right here appear. That gray flap is called the spleen. So stomach, spleen, and pancreas all kind of reside right here together. Okay, now if we look toward the back body wall and roll these intestines over to the side, we're going to start to see the kidney. Now, the kidney is covered in the peritoneum. It's known, it's kind of like that pancreas. It's retroperitoneal, which means it's behind the peritoneum. So I'm just going to use my probe, and we're just going to get a little piece of that peritoneum and break through. And when we do that, we'll start to see that kidney emerge. And you may see more juice, more of that fluid that's present in the body cavity, which may make that kidney hard to see, and looks like mine's going to end up being that way. There's a lot of fluid back here. So if this happens, we can just take the pig back to the sink, give it a drain, and try to... Now that the peritoneum has been removed from the kidney, we can see the kidney much better now. You can see it's a solid organ. Here on this side would be the left kidney. You always go in the patient's right or left. So this would be the pig's left kidney. And if we roll the intestines over here, I've removed the peritoneum from this kidney as well. So here is the right kidney. Now, sitting just medial and superior, a little bit above the kidney, are going to be the adrenal glands. Now, over here is the left adrenal gland, and to see it, you kind of have to push these abdominal organs out of the way. So I'm going to push the stomach and the spleen upward and roll the intestines over to the medial side. And if you look, there is this lighter color, like a light gray half moon structure. This is the adrenal gland. This would be the left adrenal gland because it sits just above that left kidney. So left adrenal gland is here. There's another one on the right side. So if we roll the intestines to the other side and kind of lift up the lobes of the liver, This is that liver, and there's several little lobes around there. If we kind of move everything to the side, to the midline, there is another adrenal gland right here. That would be the right adrenal gland. It sits superior and medial to the kidney. I know it may be kind of hard to see because it's dark in there, but I'm kind of wiggling it back and forth, so maybe you can see it. These adrenal glands are very, very delicate. So when you remove the peritoneum from the top of the kidney, you have to be really delicate and slow, or else you'll just rip the adrenal gland right along with it. Okay, so keep that in mind if you're doing your dissections. Be very gentle in that area, because that adrenal gland, even me just rubbing the probe back and forth, can sometimes rough it up a little bit. Okay, so we've got kidneys, adrenal glands, and then last on your list are the reproductive organs. Now, if you have a female, you can actually see ovaries down here behind the urinary bladder. This structure right here, I think I left it off. Let me point it out really quickly. This is the urinary bladder. Okay, the urinary bladder is here. If we flip it, this is where that umbilical cord was, and there's our urinary bladder right here. And usually what I recommend students do is just go ahead and separate the urinary bladder from this area of skin right here. So we can just kind of pull on it a little bit, and then now move this back, and we can see that urinary bladder a bit more clearly right here. Okay, so urinary bladder. Now again, if you have a female, the ovaries will be tucked, and the uterus too will be tucked right down in here in this cavity, right in here. And you can just kind of pull them out, use some tweezers and pull them out, and you'll be able to see the ovaries and the fallopian tubes there. Now for males, it's a little different. The testes for males reside in the scrotal sac. So they're going to be down in here, and we're going to wait until our third lab to actually dive into the reproductive system. So I'm going to not expose the testes just yet. That will appear a little bit later. Okay, so for now, we've got all the major organs of the fetal pig.